So, have you ever found yourself tangled in a conversation, maybe an argument, and you suddenly realize that, maybe half the confusion isn't even about disagreeing on the issue?
Right. It's more like you're just talking past each other, using the same words, but they mean totally different things to each of you.
Exactly. Well, what if we told you that some of history's most brilliant minds actually believed that fixing that very problem, the problem of, let's say, imprecise language, could unlock the very secrets of reality? That it could solve our deepest philosophical questions?
It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But before we really dive into this fascinating idea in the AI history of Western philosophy, we do need to share an important note.
Yes. The disclaimer.
Right. AI-generated content, and that specifically includes this podcast. Well, it confabulates. It can present ideas as fact when they might not be. And while our subject is philosophy, we want to be clear, we are not philosophers ourselves.
Good point.
The mission here for AI history of Western philosophy, beyond trying to point you towards the original sources, is really to experiment with philosophy itself as material. We want to see if we can generate some new possibilities for thought by looking at it this way.
Okay, let's unpack this. Today, here in the AI history of Western philosophy, we're exploring this, really ancient and kind of captivating quest for a perfect language.
Mm-hmm.
It's a journey that spans, believe it or not, millennia. And it's animated by this profound belief that the flaws in our everyday speech, the ambiguities, the vagueness, they aren't just inconvenient little things.
No, they're seen as the root cause, the absolute root of our philosophical arguments, our ethical muddles, maybe even our scientific errors. Imagine a language so precise it couldn't mislead.
It's hard to even picture.
And what's really fascinating here is that this exact ambition brings together two figures separated by nearly 2,500 years. You've got the Greek Sophist Prodicus of Chios.
Okay, ancient Greece.
And then jump forward to the early 20th century, Ludwig Wittgenstein, especially through his incredibly dense work, the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus.
Wow, okay. Worlds apart, you'd think. A 5th century BCE Athenian teacher focusing on practical ethics, rhetoric.
Right, someone very much involved in the public square. And then Wittgenstein, this Austrian-British sort of reclusive figure driven by formal logic, thinking about the absolute limits of everything.
Yet they both thought philosophical problems could be, dissolved?
Dissolved, exactly. Not necessarily solved like a math problem, but shown to be based on linguistic confusion. They both wanted to set up a standard, a kind of ideal correctness for language, to show up the messiness of how we usually talk.
So what does this all mean for you, our curious listener? Well, our mission today is to explore their distinct yet surprisingly parallel visions for an ideal language. We'll start by trying to reconstruct Prodicus's idea of the correctness of names, his orthoepeia. It's like he was trying to clean up natural language from the inside out.
Make it a reliable tool.
Exactly. Then we'll dive into Wittgenstein's super rigorous picture theory of meaning, which is much more abstract, logical, about how language could possibly mirror the structure of reality itself.
And by comparing these two monumental efforts, we'll uncover a central paradox, I think.
Which is?
That this very pursuit of absolute precision, well, it often bumps up against the limits of what language can actually express about human life, all the messy, important stuff.
So their failures might be the most interesting part.
They're magnificent failures, perhaps. They might just be more instructive, more revealing about language than any theoretical success could ever be. You might discover some enduring truths there. #1. Prodicus and the correctness of names. Orthoepeia. Okay, so to really get Prodicus, we need to put him in context. Think 5th century BCE Athens. This was a time of huge intellectual change.
The Golden Age, right? Socrates, Plato.
Exactly. And part of that was what scholars call a turn to language. Before this, many Greek thinkers were focused on cosmology. Where does the universe come from? What's it made of? Big abstract stuff.
Right, the elements, the void.
But the Sophists, and Prodicus was a leading sophist, they were professional educators, and they shifted the focus dramatically. They turned towards the human world, ethics, politics, and crucially, logos.
Logos, that's a big one. It means more than just logic, doesn't it?
Oh, much more. It encompasses speech, language itself, reason, argument. It's about how humans communicate and persuade and understand each other. This was a massive reorientation.
And it gets really interesting here because for these guys, language wasn't just I don't know, a passive mirror reflecting the world.
Not at all. They saw it as an active force, something that could actually shape reality, influence beliefs, determine outcomes in the real world.
Which makes sense in a place like Athens, right? A democracy.
Absolutely. Think about it. Public debates in the assembly, arguments in the law courts, the need for rhetorical skill to persuade your fellow citizens. Clear, effective communication wasn't just nice to have. It was, well, vital.
Survival almost, politically, legally.
Pretty much. And this intense focus on logos, on the power of speech, naturally led to a deep concern for correctness, or orthoepeia. They wanted to get it right.
Correctness in what sense? Grammar.
In everything. Grammar, yes, but also rhetoric, how you argue, even how you interpret poetry. It reflected this very practical need at the heart of Athenian society.
Okay, so the Sophists generally cared about correct language.
Yeah.
What made Prodicus special?
Well, while other big names like Protagoras were diving into grammatical details, is this noun masculine or feminine? What are the modes of this verb? Or someone like Hippias looked at the correctness of letters, rhythms, and poetry. Prodicus carved out a very specific niche.
Okay.
He became the go-to expert on the semantic dimension of correctness, the meaning, the proper use of names, or onomata.
So not how words are spelled or arranged, but what they actually mean.
Precisely. That was his focus.
And his big idea was this orthoepeia.
Orthoepeia, right? You could translate it as correct speech or maybe correct diction. Think of it as this really systematic, almost surgical attempt to bring order and absolute precision to the entire Greek vocabulary.
Wow. Why? Why go to all that trouble?
Because, and this is crucial for you, the listener, to grasp, Prodicus believed this linguistic precision wasn't just about sounding educated or avoiding minor misunderstandings.
No.
No. For him, it was the absolute foundation for clear thinking, for making sound ethical judgments, for effective communication in basically every part of life. He saw sloppy language leading to sloppy thought and, well, bad actions.
So fixing language could fix thinking. Maybe even fix behavior.
That seems to be the underlying belief. A very powerful idea.
Okay, so how did he propose to do this? Did he leave us a manual?
Unfortunately, not directly. Most of what we know comes through other writers, especially Plato and Aristotle, who sometimes quote him or describe his methods, occasionally even poking fun at him a bit.
The usual philosophical spawn.
Yeah. Exactly. But scholars like Robert Mayhew, for instance, have reconstructed the core of his approach. It seems to boil down to three main guiding principles for achieving this idealized, correct version of language.
Okay, let's hear them. Principle 1. All right, his first principle. And apparently this one's pretty radical.
It really is. Prodicus argued, essentially, that no two or more words should have the exact same meaning. If the language has two distinct words, say X and Y, then they must, if used correctly, refer to two distinct concepts.
Wait, so no synonyms, like big and large can't mean the exact same thing.
According to Prodicus, no. If they're different words, there must be a difference in meaning, even if it's subtle. A lazy or confused speaker might treat them as interchangeable, but the job of the expert, the linguistic analyst like himself, was to reveal that crucial difference.
Wow. So he's launching a direct assault on what we call synonymy today.
Pretty much. It forces you to scrutinize your vocabulary incredibly closely. Do we really mean the exact same thing when we say afraid versus terrified or happy versus content?
That's a tough standard. It challenges how we use language all the time.
It does. It implies every word carries a unique conceptual fingerprint, and ignoring that is a form of intellectual sloppiness.
Okay, so if different words must have different meanings, what about the flip side? Can one word have multiple meanings?
That brings us to his second principle. The principle of univocity. And the answer is a firm no. No single word should have more than one meaning or connotation.
So tackling ambiguity head on. Words like bank, which can mean, a river bank or a money bank.
Exactly. Or think about a word like right. It can mean correct, or the opposite of left, or a moral entitlement. For Prodicus, this kind of polysemy, multiple meanings packed into one word, is a fundamental flaw in language, a recipe for confusion.
So in his ideal language, every word would have exactly one definition.
One and only one designated meaning. Think about the clarity that would bring. When you heard a word, there would be zero doubt about the concept it referred to. No need to rely on context to figure it out.
So much of our communication does rely on context, doesn't it?
It does. And Prodicus would challenge that reliance. He wanted the meaning to be inherent in the word itself, unmistakable.
Okay, principle 3. This one sounds interesting. Etymological congruence. What's that about?
This one posits that a word's history, its origin, its etymology, should actually be consistent with its correct current meaning. It suggests a belief in a kind of linguistic naturalism.
Naturalism, meaning language isn't just arbitrary convention.
Exactly. It implies the link between a name and the thing it names isn't purely random, not just something we all agreed on for convenience. Prodicus seems to have believed that the original name givers, maybe some wise figures in the past,
The original word inventors?
sort of, he thought they embedded a correct description or definition within the word's very sounds, its structure, and that this original true meaning might have gotten corrupted over time through misuse.
But it could be recovered.
Yes, by an expert analyst examining the word's roots. So for Prodicus, using a word correctly meant aligning its current use with this inherent natural meaning encoded in its etymology.
That's fascinating. It suggests there's a true meaning waiting to be discovered for each word, not just meanings we assign. You can see why that would appeal if you're seeking philosophical certainty.
Definitely. It grounds meaning in something seemingly more stable than just human agreement.
So these are the principles.
Okay.
How did he actually apply them? What did he do?
Well, his famous method, the practical application, was making these incredibly fine distinctions between words that seemed like synonyms. It's known as diaresis ton onomatun, literally the division of names.
The division of names.
And Plato's dialogues are actually full of scenes where Prodicus gets called in, sometimes almost like a party trick, to meticulously parse words that other characters are using interchangeably.
Can you give an example?
Sure. In Plato's Protagoras, there's a bit where he distinguishes between being an impartial audience versus an egalitarian one.
What's the difference there?
Well, an impartial audience listens fairly to both sides, maybe. But an egalitarian audience, Prodicus suggests, demands equal time or standing for everyone involved. Subtle, but potentially important in a debate.
I see. Or the debate versus quarrel one you mentioned.
Right. A debate implies a rational exchange aiming at truth, while a quarrel is more personal, emotional, maybe aiming just to win. Understanding that distinction could totally change the tenor of a discussion, couldn't it?
Absolutely. It sets different expectations.
Perhaps his most famous example, which Aristotle mentions, was his detailed analysis of words related to pleasure. He apparently distinguished between basic pleasure, hodona, delight, terpsis, enjoyment, euphrosuna, and gratification.
Kara.
Wow, most of us probably just lump those together.
We do. But Prodicus would argue that failing to see the differences leads to muddled thinking, especially about something as important as ethics. The goal wasn't just to be fussy about words, not pedantry for its own sake.
No, it was a tool. A philosophical tool, exactly, designed to bring clarity to complex areas like ethics or politics by first cleaning up the vocabulary used to discuss them. Imagine trying to have a nuanced ethical debate if everyone meant something slightly different by pleasure or goodness. Hashtag 1.5, the profound philosophical purpose of precision.
Okay, so despite critics then and now calling him a pedant, maybe obsessed with semantic hair-splitting,
Which they certainly did.
you're saying there was a much deeper philosophical purpose here. Precision wasn't the end goal, it was a means to an end.
Absolutely. He wasn't just polishing words for the sake of it. He was trying to polish thought itself, particularly in crucial areas of human life. First and foremost, orthoepeia served a profound ethical purpose. Prodicus genuinely believed that by forcing people to use moral terms correctly, with precision, he could actually guide them towards clear ethical thinking, and maybe even more virtuous behavior.
So correct language leads to correct living.
That seems to be the core connection he was making. It was central to his teaching. And it's really plausible that Socrates, the master of definitional inquiry and ethics, always asking, what is justice? What is courage? Might have been influenced by Prodicus. Some sources say Socrates was actually his student for a time.
Interesting. The Socratic method might have roots in perdition word analysis.
It's very possible. Think about Prodicus's famous fable, The Choice of Heracles. Heracles has to choose between virtue and vice. Vice uses vague, alluring terms about easy pleasures. Virtue, on the other hand, uses carefully distinguished concepts to describe a harder path leading to lasting satisfaction.
So the story itself uses linguistic clarity as a way to teach morality.
Exactly. It shows how language, used precisely, becomes a pathway to understanding and choosing virtue. It's not just academic, it's a tool for moral guidance.
Okay, ethics is huge, but you also mentioned the practical side in Athens.
Right. Beyond ethics, his method had obvious benefits in the rough and tumble of Athenian public life. In the assembly and the courts, precision was power. Well, a speaker who could define terms clearly, avoid ambiguity in their own arguments, and just as importantly, expose the sloppy or deliberately misleading language of an opponent, that speaker held a massive advantage.
So you could win debates or court cases by being the clearer speaker.
Prodicus taught that true persuasive power came not from fancy verbal tricks, but from genuine conceptual clarity. If you understood the concepts better because you understood the words better, you could make a stronger case. For you, the listener, just think how often today misunderstandings derail conversations, arguments, even negotiations. A precision focus on just clarifying terms could cut through so much noise.
Ethics, politics.
Yeah.
What else? Did he apply this method more broadly?
He did, quite remarkably. He applied his linguistic analysis to a wider project of naturalistic inquiry. And the most famous example is his really revolutionary theory about the origin of religion.
Okay. How did word analysis lead to that?
He argued that religious belief developed in stages. First, primitive humans, being practical, deified things that were useful to them, natural phenomena like the sun, the moon, rivers, or essential foods.
So bread wasn't just bread. It was seen as divine.
In a sense, bread became personified as the goddess Demeter, wine as the god Dionysus. It was a deification of utility.
Okay, stage one. What's stage two?
Later, he suggested, humans started deifying the inventors of useful things, the culture heroes who discovered agriculture or invented crafts. They essentially projected the names of the useful products onto these supposed divine inventors.
Ah, so the god was originally just the name for the thing or the benefit it provided.
That's the core of his rationalistic account. He used his method, looking for the original true meaning of the names of the gods, to argue they originally referred to useful things or natural forces. It was a way of deconstructing traditional theology, explaining it away through naturalism and cultural evolution.
Wow, that's a huge leap from just distinguishing pleasure from delight. He's using word analysis to question the very foundations of belief.
It shows the incredible scope of his project. From individual words to the origins of culture and religion.
So putting it all together, Prodicus wasn't trying to invent a whole new language like Esperanto or something?
No, not at all. He didn't create a new grammar, didn't invent new words. Instead, he worked meticulously with the existing Greek language. He analyzed its actual usage, its history, its etymology.
To find the correctness he believed was already hiding in there.
Exactly. Hidden beneath layers of conventional misuse and sloppiness. His core belief seems to be that ordinary language isn't fundamentally broken, just corrupted.
So the philosopher, the educator, is like a linguistic therapist.
That's a great way to put it. Stripping away the layers of imprecision to restore language to its proper, naturally correct state. His ideal language, then, was really an idealized version of natural language itself.
Perfected for human purposes.
Perfected for the practical purposes of ethical discussion, political debate, rational understanding. It was a deeply humanistic, practical project aimed at improving human life through clearer communication.
Which, as you said, sets up a really stark contrast with Wittgenstein.
A profound contrast. Wittgenstein's Tractatus is operating on a completely different plane, abstract, logical, almost transcendental. #tag2, Wittgenstein's Tractatus and the logical picture of reality.
Right. So if Prodicus wanted to clean up the language of the Athenian marketplace, Wittgenstein. Well, his early work feels like an attempt to map the logical structure of the entire universe.
That's not an exaggeration. The Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, published in 1921, is just breathtaking in its ambition.
And didn't he write a lot of it while he was a soldier in World War I?
He did. Much of it conceived and written in notebooks while serving on the front lines. The mental focus required under those conditions is just astounding.
And the book itself isn't proposing a new way to talk, like Prodicus.
No, not at all. It's trying to identify the fundamental, the necessary relationship between language, thought, and reality. And in doing that, it aims to draw the absolute limits of what can be thought and said meaningfully. It's presenting this stark, crystalline vision of a logically perfect language, not as a practical proposal, but as a kind of transcendental argument.
Transcendental.
Meaning it's arguing about the necessary preconditions for any language to be able to represent reality at all. It's asking, what must language and reality be like for meaning to even be possible?
Okay, that's a radically different scale from Prodicus right from the start.
And notice where Wittgenstein starts. The Tractatus doesn't begin with language. It begins with ontology, the study of being what fundamentally exists.
The very first lines, right? The world is everything that is the case.
Exactly. And then the world is the totality of facts, not of things. That second one is huge.
Oh, why facts, not things? What's the difference?
Well, traditional philosophy often focused on substances or objects, things like tables, chairs, atoms. Wittgenstein says the ultimate building blocks of the world aren't isolated things, but facts. Tatsashin.
Okay, and a fact is?
A fact is simply the existence of states of affairs. Sachverhalt. Think of it like this. The cat is on the mat. That whole situation, that arrangement is a fact. It's not just the cat or the mat, but their specific relationship.
So reality is made of these situations, these arrangements.
Exactly. And a state of affairs, in turn, is a specific combination, a configuration of simple, unanalyzable objects. Gegenstände.
Simple objects, like atoms.
Maybe, but maybe more fundamental. Think of them as the absolute bedrock of reality, the points that can't be broken down any further. Wittgenstein doesn't give examples, crucially. Their existence is a logical necessity for his system.
And these objects have properties.
They have internal properties or a logical form, which dictates how they can combine with other objects, like Lego bricks having specific connection points. An object can only fit together with others in certain ways defined by its inherent nature.
Okay, so objects combine in specific ways to form possible states of affairs.
Right, and the totality of all possible states of affairs, both the ones that actually exist, which are the facts, and the ones that could exist but don't buy, that totality makes up what Wittgenstein calls logical space.
Logical space. Like the realm of all possibilities.
Precisely. And the actual world we live in is just the subset of those possible states of affairs that happen to exist, that happen to be facts.
And we know this structure. How? By looking at the world.
No, and this is key. This entire metaphysical structure isn't discovered empirically by doing science. It's deduced. Wittgenstein argues it's a necessary precondition for any language that can make sense, that can represent the world. For you, the listener, getting this abstract framework is vital because it's the foundation upon which his theory of language is built. He has to establish what reality must be like for language to hook onto it.
Okay, so reality has this underlying logical structure of facts, states of affairs, and objects. How does language connect to that?
Through the picture theory of meaning. This is the central mechanism in the Tractatus. Wittgenstein famously says, we make to ourselves pictures of facts.
We make pictures, like mental images.
Not necessarily visual images. Think logical pictures. A proposition, Sats, a meaningful statement, is meaningful if and only if it is a logical picture build of a possible state of affairs. Our thoughts, when expressed in language, are structured like these logical pictures.
How does a sentence picture a state of affairs?
Through sharing the same logical structure. It's based on a principle called isomorphism.
Isomorphism, meaning same shape or same form.
Exactly. A picture depicts a state of affairs because it shares a common logical structure or pictorial form with what it depicts. The picture itself, the proposition, is also a fact. It's composed of elements like words or names arranged in a specific way. Each element in the picture stands for an object in the state of affairs, and the structure of the elements in the picture mirrors the structure of the objects in the state of affairs.
Okay, let's try that courtroom analogy again. The toy cars showing the accident.
Perfect. The little toy cars are the elements in the picture. They stand for the real cars, the objects. The way you arrange the toy cars one behind the other or side by side, that spatial relationship mirrors the spatial relationship between the actual cars in the accident, the state of affairs.
So a sentence like, the cat is on the mat. The words cat, mat stand for the objects, and the structure X is on Y mirrors the actual relationship.
Precisely. It functions the same way, but in logical space, not physical space. The arrangement of names in the proposition pictures the arrangement of objects in reality.
And this theory explains truth, too.
It does. It leads to a crucial distinction between the sense, sin, of a proposition and its truth value. A proposition has sense if it pictures a possible state of affairs, whether that state of affairs exists or not.
Like the unicorn diagram. It makes sense. We understand what it depicts, even though unicorns aren't real.
Exactly. You understand the meaning, the sense, without knowing if it's true or false. A proposition is true if the state of affairs it pictures actually exists in the world, is a fact. It's false if the state of affairs it pictures does not exist. It's a very sophisticated correspondence theory. Truth is when the logical picture matches reality. Hashtag 2.4, the structure of a logically perfect language.
So Wittgenstein believed this perfect logical picturing structure was hidden under the surface of everyday language.
Yes, hidden beneath the messy, often ambiguous, sometimes logically misleading surface of natural languages like English or German. Philosophical analysis for him was the task of revealing this underlying logical form.
And this ideal underlying language would have a very specific structure.
A very clear hierarchical and compositional structure mirroring the logical atomist structure of reality we talked about. Hashtag 2.4.1, names, Namen, and objects. At the absolute base level are names, Namen. These are logically simple, unanalyzable signs in the language.
And they correspond to?
They correspond directly to the simple, unanalyzable objects of the metaphysical framework. Each name stands for one object. A name has meaning, bedutum, which is the object it stands for.
But you said earlier a name only have meaning in a proposition.
Correct. This is Wittgenstein's crucial point, inherited from Frege. Only the proposition has sense. Only in the context of a proposition has a name meaning. A name refers to an object, but that reference, that meaning, is only activated, only does any work, when the name is used as part of a complete proposition picturing a state of affairs.
So unlike Prodicus, who focused on defining individual words, Wittgenstein says names are meaningless on their own.
In terms of having sense, yes, they have reference, they point to objects, but they don't say anything, don't make a claim about the world until they're combined in a proposition.
Okay, so names are combined. How?
They're combined to form elementary propositions, Elementarsets. These are the simplest possible kind of meaningful statements, the absolute atoms of language.
And the picture.
Each elementary proposition pictures a single atomic fact, the simplest kind of fact, a basic combination of simple objects. It's a nexus, a concatenation of names, as Wittgenstein puts it.
Like maybe this spot is red, if this spot and red were simple objects names.
Potentially, although Wittgenstein famously never gives definitive examples. The key point is their logical simplicity and independence. Elementary propositions are logically independent of each other. The truth or falsity of one tells you absolutely nothing about the truth or falsity of any other.
Okay, so the world is built of atomic facts, and language is built of elementary propositions picturing them.
Exactly, and all other meaningful propositions are complex propositions, and their meaning is entirely derived from the elementary ones.
Ow.
They are constructed as truth functions of elementary proposition.
Truth functions, like in logic class, using and or not.
Precisely those. The truth or falsity of any complex proposition, like the cat is on the mat and the dog is asleep, is determined completely and solely by the truth or falsity of the elementary propositions that make it up. The cat is on the mat, the dog is asleep, combined using those logical operators.
So any meaningful statement about the world, no matter how complicated,
can, in principle, be analyzed down to a combination of elementary propositions whose truth depends only on whether the atomic facts they picture exist.
that gives you a really solid logical foundation for all factual meaning.
That's the goal. A precise, unshakable foundation built on logic and the picturing relationship.
Okay, this is an incredibly intricate system, but what was the ultimate point? Why build this whole logical edifice? Was it just to show how language could work perfectly?
The ultimate purpose wasn't just descriptive. It was, as we hinted, demarcational. To draw a sharp, inviolable line between what can be said meaningfully and what cannot be said, the line between sense and nonsense.
And this demarcation was a Wittgenstein's solution to the problems of philosophy.
Yes. He believed that philosophical problems arise precisely when we try to cross that line, when we try to say things that fundamentally cannot be said.
So what falls within the line? What can be said?
The realm of the sayable consists of the totality of true and false propositions that picture possible states of affairs in the world. Basically, statements about facts.
The stuff science talks about.
Exactly. This domain is, in essence, the domain of the natural sciences. Science describes how the world is, the contingent facts that make up reality. Language, used correctly according to the Tractatus, can state these facts.
Okay, so what lies beyond the line? What's nonsense?
Now this is where it gets really radical. Beyond the limit of the sayable lies the unsayable, what Wittgenstein calls nonsense, unsinnig. And crucially, this isn't just random gibberish, no. This category of the unsayable of nonsense includes the entire domains of ethics, aesthetics, metaphysics, and religion.
Wow. Ethics and religion are nonsense. That sounds harsh.
It's not saying they're unimportant. It's saying they don't function like factual statements about the world. They don't try to picture contingent states of affairs within the world. Instead, they try to speak about value, about meaning, about the world as a whole. And according to the Tractatus, such things cannot be pictured as facts.
Why not? Can't you say that painting is beautiful or that act was good?
You can say the words, but Wittgenstein argues those statements don't picture a state of affairs in the same way the cat is on the mat does. Goodness or beauty are not objects or properties residing in the factual world that can be pictured. A proposition might state that a man is good, but it cannot picture the goodness itself. Goodness isn't an object participating in a state of affairs.
So this leads to his famous distinction.
Between saying and showing, sagen,
Yeah.
what can be said are the contingent facts of the world, pictured by propositions. But some profound things cannot be said. They can only be shown or made manifest.
Like what? What gets shown?
Well, the logical form of the world itself, for instance, it can't be described by a proposition because any proposition has to already possess that logical form in order to say anything at all. You can't step outside logic to describe logic using language that presupposes logic.
Okay, that's tricky. It's like trying to see your own eyeball.
A good analogy. Logical form is shown by the structure of our propositions. It makes itself manifest in how language works. Similarly, ethical and aesthetic values are not in the world of facts, but are shown in our attitudes, our actions, our way of engaging with the world. These belong to what Wittgenstein calls the mystical, das mystisch, things felt or experienced, but not statable as facts, hashtag 2.5.1, the Tractatus as illuminating nonsense. And then comes the final amazing twist. Wittgenstein declares that the propositions of the Tractatus itself,
The very book explaining all this.
are also, strictly speaking, nonsense. They don't picture facts about the world either. They attempt to talk about the relationship between language and the world, about logical form.
So the book violates its own rule.
In a way, he describes them as a ladder. You use the propositions of the Tractatus to climb up, to gain a certain understanding, to see the world correctly, and then you must throw the ladder away.
Because the ladder itself is part of the realm you're trying to transcend.
Precisely. They are illuminating nonsense. They help you see the limits, but they themselves are attempts to say what can only be shown, which leads to that incredibly famous final proposition. Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent.
A command for silence on the biggest questions.
On those things that fall outside the bounds of factual pictorial language, ethics, aesthetics, the meaning of life, silence is the only logically consistent response, according to the Tractatus. Hashtag 2.5.2. Not prescriptive reform, but profound critique.
So let's be really clear. The Tractarian project isn't like Prodicus's. It's not a practical program for cleaning up everyday language.
Not at all. It's a profound philosophical critique. Wittgenstein isn't giving examples of elementary propositions or simple objects because his argument is entirely a priori, purely logical, not empirical. He's not looking at how we do talk.
He's establishing the necessary logical conditions for any possible language to be able to represent reality at all.
Exactly. His goal is to solve philosophy's problems by showing they mostly arise from a deep misunderstanding of the logic of our language. We get tangled up trying to say things that can't logically be said.
So the solution isn't to answer the big metaphysical questions.
But to demonstrate that they are fundamentally ill-formed, they're pseudo-problems. By clarifying the limits of language, these questions don't get answered. They dissolve.
It's like Kant's critique then, setting the limits of reason.
Very much in that vein. It's a demarcational project, establishing the a priori conditions and limits of meaningful thought and expression. But unlike Prodicus's practical program aimed at improving human discourse, Wittgenstein's project is this totalizing critique that reveals the structure of meaning itself and ultimately prescribes this profound, reverent silence on the questions that often matter most to us.
Okay, so we have Prodicus trying to perfect Greek for practical life, and Wittgenstein macking the logical limits of all possible language. Vastly different projects, and yet,
Yeah.
you said there are points where they converge.
Absolutely. Despite the huge gulf in time, methodology, and ambition, they share some really fundamental convictions. Both started from this core belief that linguistic imprecision isn't just a minor annoyance.
No, it's the root of major errors.
Exactly. The primary source of deep philosophical confusion and ethical mistakes. They both saw bad language leading to bad thinking.
So in a way, both saw their work as a kind of therapy. Linguistic therapy.
That's a great way to think about it. Therapy for conceptual problems, for intellectual ailments caused by misusing or misunderstanding language. And for you, the listener, this is really that aha moment.
Yeah.
Two incredibly sharp minds, millennia apart, zeroed in on the very same core problem. That's remarkable. And it's not just the general idea, but the specific diagnosis that converges. Prodicus, remember, saw the failure to use words correctly, leading directly to social friction, to ethical discord. His distinction between debate and quarrel.
Right, that wasn't just semantics. It was diagnosing a social problem rooted in fuzzy language. If you don't know the difference, you end up quarreling when you should be debating.
Precisely. And Wittgenstein similarly states outright that most of the propositions and questions of philosophers arise from our failure to understand the logic of our language.
So for Wittgenstein, the deepest problems of philosophy weren't actually deep problems at all.
He saw them as pseudo-problems, symptoms of being confused about how language actually works, how it connects or fails to connect to the world, like grammatical illusions almost.
So, a shared diagnosis. Confused language causes serious problems, whether social or philosophical. And if they share the diagnosis, do they share the cure? You mentioned dissolving problems earlier.
Yes, that's another key convergence. Their goal wasn't necessarily to provide new answers or win arguments on the existing terms. It was more about reframing the situation, so the initial problem just evaporates.
How did Prodicus do that?
He believed if he could just get people to agree on the precise meaning of their terms, to see, for example, that they should be debating rationally, not quarreling emotionally, then the conflict itself might be resolved through mutual understanding based on shared, clear concepts.
Okay, clarity dissolves conflict. In Wittgenstein.
His goal was more radical, but structurally similar. He aimed to show that those grand metaphysical questions, like, is the good the same as the beautiful, are basically nonsensical tangles. They arise because we treat words like good as if they were names for things we can compare factually.
Which, according to the Tractatus, they aren't.
Right. So by revealing the true logical structure of language, where good doesn't function like a name for an object, these pseudo-problems don't get answered. They dissolve. They're shown to be based on a category mistake about language.
So, both aimed to fix the underlying linguistic confusion, letting the problems disappear. Hashtag tag 3.4 commitment to a correspondence theory of truth. And one final point of convergence you mentioned. They both seem committed to some kind of correspondence theory of truth, the idea that correct language somehow matches reality.
Yes, each in his own way. Prodicus, with his quest for the natural correctness of names, believed there was a proper, non-arbitrary fit between a word and what it refers to.
The etymological idea that the original meaning was somehow naturally connected to the thing.
Exactly. He was trying to recover that original correct correspondence, which he thought convention had messed up. Wittgenstein's picture theory, on the other hand, is an explicit, highly formalized correspondence theory.
Where the proposition is true if its logical structure matches the structure of an actual state of affairs.
Precisely. Isomorphism. So even though their ideas of reality were vastly different ethical concepts for Prodicus, atomic facts for Wittgenstein and their ideas of correspondence were different natural fit versus logical mirroring.
They shared that fundamental ambition to make language a clear window onto reality.
A transparent medium, yes, allowing reality to be correctly apprehended and represented. But it's right here in how they tried to achieve this transparency that their profound differences really come to light. And those differences are huge. Okay, despite those intriguing similarities in their goals, the actual architectures of their ideal languages and the philosophical projects they built around them are just fundamentally different. Irreconcilable, really.
So where's the biggest split?
The most foundational difference, I think, is where they locate the primary unit of meaning. For Prodicus, it's all about the individual word, the onoma. His whole project, orthoepeia, is about lexical hygiene, cleaning up the dictionary, basically.
Making sure each word has one clear meaning. For him, a sentence is clear because the words in it are clear.
Exactly. Meaning builds up from the perfectly defined words. Wittgenstein, however, influenced heavily by the logician Frege, performs this radical inversion.
That quote again. Only the proposition has sense.
Only in the context of a proposition has a name meaning. For Wittgenstein, individual names don't have sense on their own. They only have reference, Bedeutung. They point to objects. But this reference only gets activated, only becomes meaningful when the name is used within a complete thought, a proposition that pictures something.
So the meaning isn't in the brick, it's in the wall. Or, using your analogy, not in the chess piece itself, but in its role in the game.
Perfect. The identity and powers of a chess piece are defined by the rules of the game, its function within the whole system, the logical syntax of the proposition. Meaning, for Wittgenstein, resides holistically in the structured proposition. That's the smallest unit of language that can actually make a claim about reality.
There's a huge shift in perspective from Prodicus's focus on the word. And this difference in the unit of meaning seems tied to a huge difference in how they worked, their methodology.
Absolutely. Prodicus's method is fundamentally empirical, grounded in language as it's actually used. He's a philologist, an analyst of a specific natural language, Greek.
Looking at real speech, poetry, word histories.
Right. His tools are examining usage, comparing synonyms, investigating etymology. His work is rooted in the contingent historical reality of the Athenian linguistic community. He studies language as found.
Wittgenstein's method, though, totally different.
Entirely a priori and logical. He's not interested in the specific quirks of German or English. He's after the essential logical structure that must underlie any possible language capable of representing the world.
Regardless of history or usage.
Completely. His tool isn't philology. It's the formal calculus of predicate logic developed by Frege and Russell. He deduces the necessity of simple objects and elementary propositions, not by finding examples, but through a transcendental argument. If language makes sense, then reality and language must have this logical structure.
So Prodicus studies language. Wittgenstein tries to derive the logical essence of language from the conditions of sense itself. That's a critical difference for you, the listener. One starts from observed language, the other from pure logic. And this methodological divide must lead to different ideas about what correctness even means.
It does, drastically. Prodicus's orthodos is fundamentally a normative concept. He's arguing for how words ought to be used based on some idea of natural propriety or original meaning.
So his project is prescriptive, telling people the right way to talk.
Yes, to correct the flawed conventions of ordinary speech and guide people towards a more precise, therefore better way of talking and thinking, he's setting a standard for good linguistic conduct.
Wittgenstein's idea of correctness in the Tractatus isn't like that at all.
No. It's descriptive and structural. He's not prescribing how people should speak. A proposition in the Tractatus isn't correct because it's ethically good or well chosen. It's correct in a purely formal sense if it's well formed according to logical syntax, if it successfully pictures a possible state of affairs.
Whether it's true or false doesn't affect its formal correctness. It's sense.
Exactly. Its truth is a separate issue, whether the picture happens to match an actual fact. Take the current King of France is bald. For Wittgenstein, that sentence has sense. It's formally correct because it pictures a possibility. It just happens to be false.
Whereas for Prodicus,
using words in a way that generates such falsehoods or refers to non-existent things might itself be seen as a mark of incorrect, sloppy usage. Wittgenstein cares about the conditions for sense. Prodicus cares about the conditions for proper, effective, maybe even truthful usage.
okay, final big difference. The overall scope and ambition.
Profoundly different. Prodicus's project, intellectually demanding as it was, is ultimately focused on the practical, the imminent task of improving human life here and now.
Better ethics, better politics, better understanding of culture.
Right. His goal is clarity for the sake of making life within the world more intelligible, more rational, maybe more just. It's fundamentally a humanistic project.
Wittgenstein's project in the Tractatus is not that.
Not at all. It's totalizing, metaphysical, transcendental. It's not about improving life within the world. It's about drawing the very limits of the world, the limits of what can be meaningfully said about it.
His goal isn't clear, talk about justice, but showing justice is unsayable.
In the final analysis, yes. As a value in itself, it falls outside the realm of factual propositions. So Prodicus seeks to refine the language we use to discuss the most important things in life. Wittgenstein's analysis leads him to conclude that the most important things in life cannot be discussed meaningfully at all.
Wow. Prodicus's ideal language is a tool for better living. Wittgenstein's ideal language is a map showing the border between the world and silence.
The silence that lies beyond the limits of factual description. These divergences really highlight the inherent paradoxes you run into when you chase the dream of a perfect language. Paradoxes revealed in their, well, magnificent failures.
Okay, so neither Prodicus nor Wittgenstein actually gave us a perfect language we can use. Their projects, in that sense, failed, but you're suggesting there's immense value even in that failure.
Absolutely. Even if the goal is ultimately unreachable, the very attempt to construct a perfect language, a system free from ambiguity and confusion, is incredibly philosophically fruitful.
How so?
Because that rigorous effort forces you to examine all the hidden, unstated assumptions embedded in our ordinary ways of speaking. It throws them into sharp relief.
Like Prodicus making you ask, wait, what do I really mean by pleasure?
Exactly. That process of clarification, even if it doesn't end with a final, universally agreed upon definition, sharpens your thinking. It pushes you towards a more responsible, more self-aware use of language.
And Wittgenstein's Tractatus, even with its extreme conclusions.
The sheer logical rigor forces you to confront fundamental questions about representation itself. How is it even possible for sounds or marks on paper to say something true or false about the world out there? What makes meaning possible?
So trying to build the perfect model reveals how the actual thing works.
It illuminates the incredibly complex interplay of logical structure, reference, meaning, and use that allows language to function at all. The value of these ideal systems isn't in their practical use, but as diagnostic tools. They reveal the hidden machinery and the potential weak spots of our everyday language. They show you, the listener, what critical questions to ask about your own communication.
But there's a downside to this pursuit of perfection, isn't there?
Yeah.
You called it the paradox of exclusion.
Yes. This is the critical lesson, I think. The perfection of any ideal language, whether Prodicus's or Wittgenstein's, is achieved only through radical simplification and purification.
Meaning you have to throw stuff out.
You necessarily have to cast out or declare illegitimate whatever doesn't fit the chosen standard of correctness. You draw a line, and anything outside that line is deemed flawed or meaningless or simply ignored.
And the cost of drawing that line.
The cost, ultimately, is expressive impoverishment. You gain precision in one area, but you lose richness and flexibility across the board. Hashtag 5.2.1, Prodicus's expressive poverty.
How would that play out in Prodicus's ideal language? If every word had only one strict meaning?
Well, think about it. If fully realized, it would be devastatingly rigid. It would kill poetic language instantly. Poetry thrives on ambiguity, metaphor, suggestion, multiple layers of meaning, all the things Prodicus wanted to eliminate.
No more metaphors, no more puns, no more subtle wordplay.
Logically, no. It would also cripple the efficiency and flexibility of everyday speech. We rely on synonyms for nuance, on context to sort out meaning quickly. Imagine a conversation where you constantly had to stop and define every single term according to its one true etymological meaning.
It would be incredibly precise, but maybe
Lifeless.
sterile, perhaps? Stripped of the humor, the creativity, the sheer adaptability that makes human communication a living practice, not just data exchange. The very imperfections Prodicus targeted ambiguity, polymosemy, are in many ways the source of language's vitality. Hashtag 5.2 Wittgenstein's catastrophic silence.
Okay, so Prodicus sacrifices richness for precision. What about the early Wittgenstein? The exclusion seems even more severe there, far more dramatic. And from a human standpoint, you could almost call it catastrophic. The logically perfect language of the Tractatus achieves its crystalline perfection by drawing its boundaries with ruthless, absolute precision.
Inside the boundary. Facts, science, what can be said?
Right. The world of facts, describable by propositions. But outside lies, nonsense.
And that category of nonsense includes
Ethics, aesthetics, religion, metaphysics, and he talk about the meaning or value of life itself.
So the Tractatus gives us a language that could, in theory, describe the position and momentum of every particle in the universe.
Map out the entire causal network of reality with perfect logical clarity.
But it literally cannot express why a sunset is beautiful, why a selfless act is good, or why life has any meaning at all.
Precisely. The pursuit of logical perfection leads to a system perfectly equipped to describe everything that is the case, but which is forced into absolute total silence about everything that truly matters to us as human beings.
The price of a perfect picture of the world is the inability to say anything about its value.
Right?
That's profound and kind of terrifying.
It is. And this devastating conclusion wasn't lost on Wittgenstein himself, which leads to one of the most remarkable turns in philosophical history.
His later work, The Philosophical Investigations.
Exactly. Published after his death, it represents one of the most profound acts of self-critique imaginable. In it, he systematically takes apart the core assumptions of his own earlier project, the Tractatus.
He refutes himself.
In large part, yes. And in doing so, he implicitly dismantles the foundations of any project, like Prodicus's, that seeks a single essentialist standard of linguistic correctness.
So what was the first pillar of the Tractatus to fall?
The idea that words have a single essential meaning. That core belief shared by both Prodicus, natural correctness, and the early Wittgenstein, names referring to simple objects.
What did he replace it with?
With the famous concept of family resemblances, he uses the example of the word game. Think about all the things we call games, board games, card games, ball games, Olympic games. Is there one single essential feature they all share?
Probably not.
Eh.
Some involve competition, some don't. Some have rules, some are more free-form, some are fun, some are serious.
Exactly. Wittgenstein argues there's no single essence. Instead, games are connected by a complex network of overlapping and crisscrossing similarities, like the resemblances between members of a family. Shared noses here, similar eye color there, a common gait, but no single feature shared by all.
So words don't have a core definition, just a web of related uses.
That's the idea. No single essence, just this complex web of relationships based on use.
Okay, if words don't have single essences, what happens to the idea of the single logical form of language from the Tractatus?
That gets replaced too. It's replaced by the notion of a multiplicity of language games, Rakspiel.
Language game.
Yes. Language isn't one big monolithic calculus designed solely for picturing reality. Instead, it's like a toolbox filled with a vast array of different tools.
And we use these tools for different jobs.
An endless variety of activities, giving orders, asking questions, telling jokes, describing an object, speculating about the future, praying, greeting someone, making a promise, reporting an event.
Each of those is a different language game.
Yes, each governed by its own specific rules, conventions, and purposes. The attempt to reduce all of language to the single game of picturing facts, as the Tractatus tried to do, is seen by the later Wittgenstein as a massive, distorting oversimplification. For you, the listener, this means recognizing language serves countless purposes, fulfilling countless human needs, not just one correct scientific or descriptive one.
So if language is a collection of games we play with different tools, where does meaning come from, if not from referring to objects or essences?
This leads to the absolute central maxim of his later philosophy. Meaning is fundamentally about use. He famously writes, "For a large class of cases, the meaning of a word is its use in the language."
Meaning is use, not reference.
Primarily use. How is the word employed? What job is it doing within the context of this specific language game? Meaning isn't some static link between a word and a thing. It's dynamic. It emerges from how we operate with words within our activity.
And this depends on context, shared understanding.
Yes, within the context of a particular language game and also a broader form of life, Lebensform. That's the shared background of human practices, conventions, biological realities, social interactions that make our language games possible and intelligible to each other in the first place. Meaning is woven into the fabric of our lives.
So the journey from the early Wittgenstein to the later Wittgenstein seems like the ultimate critique of the whole perfect language dream.
It really is. The Tractatus built this logically perfect system, but it ended up expressively barren, silencing itself on everything that gives life meaning.
Because it tried to impose one rigid standard.
Exactly. The investigations reveals why that was inevitable. Trying to impose a single, fixed, logical, or semantic standard onto language is doomed because language isn't an abstract system separable from life.
It's part of life.
It's an inseparable part of the messy, diverse, practical, constantly evolving fabric of human activities. The very attempt to abstract language from life in order to perfect it, whether through Prodicus's etymologies or Wittgenstein's logic, that abstraction is the source of the philosophical confusion it wants to cure.
So the perfection is an illusion.
An illusion purchased at the cost of vitality, flexibility, and connection to the human world language is supposed to serve. The ultimate limit of any perfect language project isn't logic, it's life itself in all its glorious imperfection. #outro.
So today, the AI history of Western philosophy, we've really traced these two incredible intellectual journeys, Prodicus' Ceos in ancient Athens and the early Ludwig Wittgenstein in the 20th century.
Two brilliant minds, separated by just about everything, time, culture, methods, yet, remarkably, united in this powerful ambition to master the complexities of language, to impose an ideal standard of correctness upon it.
Prodicus, the Sophist, trying to purify actual Greek from within, making distinctions for ethical and practical clarity.
While the early Wittgenstein aimed much higher, or perhaps deeper, trying to uncover the hidden logical scaffolding beneath any possible language, hoping to map the very limits of sense itself.
And their shared conviction that linguistic confusion drives philosophical error led them down such profoundly different paths.
It did. Prodicus sought clarity within language for better living. Wittgenstein sought the limits of language, leading to silence on life's biggest questions. And ultimately, that quest for absolute clarity for perfection led both into this profound paradox.
They achieve their perfection only by excluding huge, vital parts of human expression, sacrificing richness for a narrow, rigid ideal.
Exactly, the cost was too high.
And the later, Wittgenstein's own powerful self-critique, his shift from the Tractatus to language games and forms of life, that really stands as the most poignant lesson here, doesn't it?
It's an extraordinary testament to that paradox. A recognition that language isn't some pristine logical calculus we can perfect in a vacuum. It's a living, breathing, fundamentally social activity.
Meaning is woven into life itself.
Inextricably. It shapes our lives, and our lives shape it. It's an evolving toolkit, not a fixed map.
So the enduring value of Prodicus's and Wittgenstein's magnificent ambitions, it isn't really in the blueprints they left for a perfect language we might one day speak.
Probably not. The real value lies in the clarity their failures provide. By pushing that ideal of perfection to its absolute limits, both logically and practically, they demonstrate with incredible force that any attempt to purify language down to a single monolithic standard,
Whether it's Prodicus's correct names or Wittgenstein's logical pictures.
inevitably crashes against the untamable diversity and richness of what we actually do with words. The imperfections are not bugs, they're features.
So what does this all mean for you, listening now? If language isn't a perfect map to be followed, but more like this vibrant, messy, constantly adapting toolkit, how might that change things?
How might it change how you approach disagreements, or how you interpret art or poetry, or even how you think about your own deepest values, the things the Tractatus said we must be silent about?
Maybe the real goal isn't to chase a perfect language after all, but to become more skillful, more aware, maybe more forgiving users of the beautiful, messy, profoundly human language we already have. To recognize that its ambiguities, its metaphors, its shifting meanings, its very imperfections might be precisely what allow us to navigate the endless complexities of our lives, to connect, to create, to feel. What richness would we actually lose if we could only ever picture facts? Something to think about. If you've enjoyed this exploration in the AI history of Western philosophy, please do take a moment to like, subscribe, or perhaps leave us a comment. Your feedback genuinely helps us keep generating these new possibilities for thought.
We appreciate you tuning in.
We'll be back soon with another exploration into the ideas that shape our world.